Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 2011 Mitsubishi Lancer GTS. Up front is a 2.4 liter inline 4, and down below, thank God, is a 5-speed manual transmission. Now I am super excited to be reviewing this Lancer for two reasons. First of all, this car is in very good shape for its age and for the fact that it's not an Evo 10. We'll talk about how that might be a little bit misleading a little bit later on, but the second reason is the fact that I'm always excited to share Mitsubishis with you here on the channel, and this is another opportunity for me to do so. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel just like this Lancer GTS, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you would like to see all of my videos weeks or months before they're released, as well as exclusive audio content, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month. But let's get back to that 2.4 liter inline 4 under the hood. Well, that is the engine that the basic Lancer got. There were trim levels below the GTS, and the GTS is kind of the belt line before you got into the performance versions like the Rally Art or the Evo 10. It makes 168 horsepower, and it's not really impressive to pretty much anyone. They also use this in the Mitsubishi Outlander, which means that parts availability is pretty good these days. Now, as I mentioned, this engine has actually been engine swapped. This car, at about 120,000 miles, blew up its engine due to the first owner not understanding what an oil change was. So the oil was never changed and the motor went kaput, but these engines are actually usually pretty reliable. Besides that, this car just had a bad owner. 168 horsepower is definitely enough power to have fun. It's not gonna blow your hair back, it's not gonna make you upchuck your lunch, but it's enjoyable. It doesn't feel like a bump on a log. Like I said, paired to it is a 5-speed manual, and I am thanking my lucky stars because of that. The reason that the alternative was a CVT, a 14-year-old Mitsubishi CVT. It's actually what put a lot of these cars into the junkyard. It was not a good transmission. It was not very reliable, and so anytime you go to a junkyard, it's probably gonna be an automatic because the CVT gave out. Now this is the manual, and it shifts wonderfully. Has a nice notchy click into gear. It's very confident. The clutch is very, very light, which how I prefer clutches, but I wouldn't say overly light. It's a really, really nice feel, and that's what makes this car such a wonderful first stick shift car if you're looking for one. They're affordable, and they're great to drive. So overall, it's been green lights so far. Last but not least, this Lancer GTS is front wheel drive. However, you could get the all-wheel drive if you got the higher performance trims like the Evo 10 or even the Rally Art. So front wheel drive today, but there were options. How does it feel to drive the Lancer GTS? Well, it's great. As I said, that shifter feel, that transmission feel is wonderful. I've been really, really enjoying that. The 168 horsepower is good enough. Again, I'm not being blown away, but as you can probably hear in the background, it is raining today. It is in fact pouring rain, so I don't need a big turbocharged monster. I need something to keep me on the road and keep me entertained, and that's exactly what this car achieves very, very well. Visibility is good too, and the steering is on the lighter side, but I wouldn't say that it's too light. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have two physical gauges and a screen. Off to the left is my tachometer, off to the right is my speedometer, and in the center we get that little screen giving me some info, but not too crazy. Funny enough, this really reminds me of Mitsubishi's modern products, which is great for this Lancer, but not so good for current Mitsubishi. On the steering wheel, on the left, we have our skip track, volume, mode, and phone options. And off to the right, we have our cruise control. It does have standard cruise control. Off to the left, we do have a climate vent, traction control off, which is not being touched today, and two dead switches. And moving on to the door, we have the latch to get in and out, power mirrors, power locks, and power windows. Moving into the center, we do get a little digital display giving me my time, but also if I had a CD in, it would tell me track number and things like that. We do have our radio controls for tune, power, and we can switch between disc, and there is a USB input in the glove box. I don't know why it's so hidden, but it's in there. And there's one more input we'll talk about in a second. But we have our hazard switch, and then we have our climate controls. I actually really like the look and feel of these dials, the fan speed, very customizable. However, down below, we have a little cubby with these really old audio inputs. I guess if you wanted to, you could plug in a Nintendo Wii and just listen to the Wii Shop music. You know? This is the experience you could have. Very, very strange to see that. Even in 2011, this was pretty outdated, but I guess that's where we were. Then we do have a pop-open ashtray and cigarette lighter, and the shifter. The shifter does look and feel pretty economy-based. It doesn't feel special in any way, but then again, this car wasn't the top dog, so it didn't need to be special. The shifter does the job, and that's all it needs to do. Then we do have a little cubby, and we have openable cup holders, so we will do a big friggin' bottle test here in the Lancer GTS, and unfortunately it fails, but that was to be expected. Then we do have the handbrake, center console, and the seats. The seats are cloth. Again, they're not anything interesting or crazy. They are manual as well. And I've been comfortable in them, especially on this rainy day. They've been nice and cozy, and that's all I really need to ask for from the Lancer GTS. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats. So let's go do a backseat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 2011 Mitsubishi Lancer GTS, and a couple of things to note. First of all, we do get a center console, big chunky brick with two cup holders in there. We of course get power windows, which I'm not gonna open up too wide today because it's pouring rain. We don't get any vents or anything, but I do fit back here really, really well. I'm 5'11", not a small guy, as I've said in every other video. My knees don't hit the seat in front of me. My head is not hitting the ceiling. This is a really, really spacious back seat for kind of an economy car. I don't want to call the Lancer an economy car, but it definitely wasn't a Rolls Royce. It's not a Bentley. It's not insanely expensive. So there were families that grew up with these. My friend Tyler, he said his mom had a 2008, and he grew up in a back seat like this, and it's fine. It's actually relatively spacious compared to more modern cars. So I fit back here. I'm really, really happy, and that can't be found in this segment all the time. Speaking of space, we do have the trunk around the back, which is relatively unimpressive as a trunk, but here it is. Again, as a more affordable vehicle, they didn't lack trunk space like if you bought the Mirage. If you went for the Mirage, that's where the trunk space really falls off. But here in the Lancer GTS, it's fantastic. Really, really nice to see. Now we gotta talk about the looks. And this is finished in rotor glow metallic. I assume the theory behind this is when you really get on the brakes and your brake rotors light up red. That's supposedly supposed to be this color, I guess. I think it's a really pretty color. I don't know if it mimics brake rotors, but I think it's a really, really pretty color. And it's an interesting color. If you're cross-shopping this with Honda Accords and Camrys and Mazda 3s or Mazda 6s, this is going to be a big benefit, is that it was offered in really nice standout colors. So put that in the win column for the Lancer GTS. I also think this overall design has aged really, really well. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving this Mitsubishi Lancer GTS? Well, this has been shockingly eye-opening the entire time I've been driving it. Couple reasons for that. First of all, it drives really, really well. It is a fun driving car. It's engaging, it's unique, and honestly, from where I'm sitting, you can't tell much of a difference between a Honda Civic with a manual or the Camrys and Corollas when they did manuals. It's a front-wheel drive, manual car with a decently reliable 4-cylinder. It's gonna give you that good experience. However, to push it a little bit further, the owner, Brett, actually purchased this vehicle for about $800. Now, it had a blown-up engine at the time, and he bought another engine for a whopping $750. He did a clutch and spark plugs and things like that. He's in this car for less than $2,000, and he has an incredibly entertaining, good daily driver for that money. Here in 2025, that price doesn't come up when associated with automobiles anymore, let alone a good colored, manual, sport-derived vehicle. And while doing the swap, the owner, Brett, was telling me that he was pulling apart the suspension and working on little doodads, and he said that this chassis is extremely overbuilt. The axles are thicker than any car of this class that he's seen. Everything seems to be reinforced, at least when it comes to drivetrain and suspension. So if you break the tires loose with your little 2.4 liter, don't fret. You'll be just fine. And that's nice to see. An overbuilt car is a car that lasts. And although it did need an engine at 120,000 miles, it wasn't this car's fault. It wasn't the engineer's fault. This car is really, really good. And I think if you're starting your new car search or first car search or your next car search, I think one of these should be put on the list. I don't think you'll regret it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Brett for letting me borrow his Lancer GTS for today's video. Brett has been absolutely awesome. I also reviewed his Mazda B2600 and Dodge Challenger many years ago. He's been wonderful to work with, always fantastic to see him again, and this is just his most recent acquisition. But as the rain starts pouring down even harder, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Stay dry, everyone.